back to my channel. I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North. Today I want to share with you my Egyptian walking onions. So I've mentioned them and shown you some of the ones I have in various videos, but I really think that this amazing perennial food source deserves its own video. So I'm going to walk around, show you some of the ones I have, and talk about the benefits of having these plants and why, if you have a garden or a food forest or container gardens, whatever kind of gardening you do, you need to have Egyptian walking onions in your garden. This Egyptian walking onion patch that I'm showing you right now is actually the original one that I started on this property. Now, since then, I have started numerous other spots because these onions are so versatile and so amazing that once you have a few of them, you really do want more of them. These onions actually start producing before your regular onion harvest will even give you greens. So these onions, I believe, started popping up early April, and I was able to harvest a ton of the greenery as green onions, use them on baked potatoes, throw them in soups, just anything that you would use a green onion for. I was able to use these early in the season. A lot of the time people will grow this specific perennial onion because they like using the green stalks as a green onion. But there are other uses for this onion as well, because you can actually eat the whole thing. So let's pull a couple out and talk about the whole plant. Growing these Egyptian walking onions was a bit of a life changer for me in terms of gardening. So every year I try to grow more onions for my onion harvest, my annuals. And every year I find out that I should have grown more because I run out of my onion powder or my stored onions. Since I started growing Egyptian walking onions, it's not the end of the world if you run out of your onion harvest before the next season's onion harvest is ready to be pulled, because you can eat this entire plant. You can pull them out as I showed you. They have a nice little root set on them like a regular onion does. You would just clean off the paper on the outside like you would a regular onion, and throw it in whatever you're going to be cooking that day. Easy as that. You can also pull these out of the ground and actually plant them somewhere else. If you find that you have too many in one spot and you want to separate them, you can pull these out, like I said, take them somewhere else and actually replant them. And they will start growing and producing for you every year after that. It's amazing. So one of the things that I actually really love about this plant is the green stalks. So I don't ever pull them out and use this bulb. And the reason that I don't do that is because I can get what I need from the green stalks. So I'll come out here probably quite early April, mid-April, and I'll start harvesting some of these green stalks off of each of my plants and start using these in my soups, my stews. If I'm cooking a chicken and I've run out of onions, I'll come out, grab some of these, and actually just chop them up into like 4-inch pieces and throw them in my roaster. It's that easy. So the other thing about this plant, besides the fact that it comes back every year, I have to keep saying that these plants come back every year. Let's talk a little bit about what is going on the tops of these onions. These onions will never produce a flower. these onions are always going to be year one onions. Even though they're perennials, they are year one onions, and they will produce seeds. And I'm going to call them seeds because I don't want to call them onion sets, because again, they are not year two onions. And basically what will happen is, instead of producing a flower, they will produce this very heavy bulb set that will eventually pull that stalk over. These will then fall to the ground and eventually take root and cause more onions to grow the next year. Hence their name, Egyptian walking onions. So the great thing about this bulb set is that you can pull these apart and go and plant them somewhere else and start a new Egyptian walking patch, or you can eat these. So you can break them apart. I'm just going to show you here, show you how easy it is. You can break them apart just like that, and now you actually have a single onion. So you can cut the ends off, cut the stem, the stalk that is starting to grow, pull off that onion paper, and use them for cooking if that's what you want to do. If you have enough of these Egyptian walking onions that you can actually harvest these onions, then you're ahead of the game. The other thing you can do with these is you could pickle them. You could slice them in half, throw them in your dehydrator, and make onion powder out of them. It's really limitless what you can do with these bulb sets. Of course, the other thing you can do is you could take this and go and plant them. So you saw me pull all three of these Egyptian walking onions out of the ground, out of my garden. In that spot where these were, I will no longer have a perennial Egyptian walking onion growing there. What I'm going to need to do is take one of these little onion bulbs and go back over to that spot and plant this in its place to replace the ones that I've just pulled out. So if you are looking to harvest some of these bigger bulbs at the bottom of the Egyptian walking onions, but you don't want to ruin the harvest for next year, you can just come along with some of these little bulb sets that are growing at the tops of them and throw some of them in the ground where you've just pulled out the big bulbs. And next year, you'll get the same thing that I just showed you. So I've given you a couple ideas on how you can use the little onion bulb that grow at the top of the Egyptian walking onions. But one thing that I want to mention is that you can't store these like you would your regular onions. They will dry up, shrivel up, and they won't be any good. Now, if you're thinking that you don't have a use for them right now, you don't want to dehydrate them, you don't want to pickle them, and you just don't need them right now, but you don't want them to go to waste. Because if you leave them on the plants and they don't tip over and they don't propagate on their own, they will dry out as well. So if you're thinking that you want to utilize them for later on, you can actually cut the stems off, cut the bottoms off, remove that paper, throw them into a Ziploc bag, and throw them in your freezer. So that later on, if you are making a soup, a stew, a chicken, a roast, whatever it is that you're making, pull out a handful of them and throw them in your pot and call it a day. So I hope that you have learned something about this amazing perennial food source. I hope that if you can't get your hands on some of these through some of the seed companies, that maybe you know somebody that is willing to share some with you. That's how I got mine originally, and I'm constantly sharing these with people because I think that if you don't have Egyptian walking onions in your garden yet, you should get them. Thanks for spending time with me.